Berta Movie was born in 1916 in Krucha, a small town in Mogilev region of Russia, but left before she was 3 for Malaya Vishera, a bigger town in Russia, where she lived there until 1928. In 1927, Berta's sister Sephormia Movie was born.
Her mother, Maria Efremova Murport, met her father, Yevsky Yakovlevich Mazo, at college. They both came from the Krucha shtetls, so they spoke Russian and Yiddish.
All of the Jewish holidays in the Movie family were celebrated, including Shabbat. Berta's parents rarely attended synagogue and were not active members of the Jewish community. They did not keep kosher either.
In Malaya Vishera, Berta was an ordinary student attending ordinary school. There were no Jewish schools. Besides her studies, Berta learned music and spent much of her free time in the Tavchesky garden.
She was also an avid member and leader in a pioneer camp of St. Petersburg. Berta's pioneer camp educated her on communist ideals like all others. Berta's camp was near Luga, a suburb within St. Petersburg.
After moving to Leningrad, the family continued their celebration of Jewish holidays. They brought matzot for Pesach and kept away from chametz. Berta attended synagogue only on important events such as Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, but her favorite celebration was on Simchat Torah. It was the last day of the Torah reading, and the Torah scroll and people would dance in the streets everywhere.
Berta's soon-to-be husband, Mikhail Berkozon, was finishing up school at a Jewish technical school, studying Yiddish at the time right before the war started. After he graduated, they got married in 1939. At the time, she was working in Chivarit institution. A year later, Berta's mom passed away. However, another year after that, her oldest daughter, Mara, was born. When Mara was about 5 months old, the war broke out.
Berta and her family were always on the move from one place to another in the summer of 1994. They rented a townhome, also known as a dacha, in the suburb of St. Petersburg. As they were living there, Germans were approaching, and Berta managed to escape with her dad, sister, who was 13 at the time, husband, and daughter. They had to leave pretty much everything behind. They ended up going to Tosno and freight cars adapted for people called heated good vans. Because Berta was emotionally shook by the travel and war, she couldn't produce breast milk at the time, so she had to take it from special canteens and warm it up to give it to Mara on the way. On
her way to Perm, Berta met a lady named Emma. Emma was a doctor. She wrote prescriptions for infant food and helped Berta get milk, porridge, and kizzles for her daughter and sister so they could eat.
Berta decided to go to Perm because one of her neighbors that she knew before the war told her that Perm was a very solid place to live. So she went there after stopping in Chelyabinsk. Her husband stayed back to work, but she did not want to lose contact with him, so she wrote to him in Perm. Berta and her daughter were living in pretty bad conditions in an apartment that had no water, no heat, and on top of that, broken windows.
Berta Movie eventually found a better apartment to live in, which was more in the center of the city. It wasn't her apartment yet. Movie went to Communist Party committee and told them about her living conditions, and with her daughter and her sister, and begged them to give her the apartment. They then let Movie move in.
Berta became a school teacher at school, and she would take the school lunches home to feed the family. She worked as a school teacher till spring of 42 because they had to leave Sverdlovsk. This happened because the husband got a job transfer, which was from a large pipe plant to a heavy machine production facility. Her husband visited Berta on the way to his new job, but they couldn't go with him at the moment.
Once Berta's husband settled down, the Movie family moved into a small apartment but ended up getting a new room in the attic. Their small room was 16 square meters large. Meanwhile, there was 5 of them in there. Berta had a stove for heating, and the people next to them were non-Jews, and there was a mother and her daughter, who were very nice people. The bottom floor was a military school.
The Movie family was still living in the attic, but when in 1944, Berta gave birth to her second daughter named Lubov. They finally upgraded to another apartment on the 3rd floor with 2 bedrooms, a balcony, central heating, and a bathroom. Berta got a small garden to grow vegetables, but after her first one failed.
Mazo traveled back to Leningrad in 1948. Her sister Serafima went back before she did. Mazo's father also came back to Leningrad. Even finding his old apartment, Berta's husband stayed in Sverdlovsk for a little, but eventually came to Leningrad.
She did her best to raise her children surrounded by Jewish tradition and culture, continuing to celebrate holidays, even making matzot for Pesach a couple of times.
Not many family members of Mazo were killed during the war. Only her Aunt Rachel and her cousins Grigory and Israel were killed by the Nazis. Her Aunt Rachel and her husband lived in Krovov and hid from the Germans until someone gave them up. Mazo's husband lost his parents and sister around 1942. Most other relatives from the Ukraine left for America after the war.
Berta Mazo had 2 daughters who gave her 2 grandsons who have given her 3 great grandchildren. She is lucky to have some restitution.